Good evening. Hope all of you are doing well. We are learning Maseches Succah Daf Vav. We are starting 6 lines from the bottom of the page at the very beginning of the line where it says shiur de oraisa ninhu. And what the Gemara is doing now is asking a question on the line with which we concluded yesterday. Yesterday, after a dialogue, we figured out that according to Rabbi Yehuda, the only reason we know that a sukkah has a minimum height of 10 tvachim is from the fact that it is a halacha l'mosh misinai. And the line that we quoted is 7 lines up that says, shiurin chatzitzin u'mechitzin halacha l'mosh misinai. To be clear, halacha l'mosh misinai is a din deoraisa that is not listed explicitly in the Torah. And a pasuk in Chumash that will say, for example, you can't kill somebody, that's explicit. Halacha l'mosh misinai, that a sukkah has to be 10 tefachim, no psukim in Chumash. So here, the Gemara is going to start questioning this assumption that shiurin chatzitzin and mechitzin are halacha l'mosh misinai. Maybe they're not halacha l'mosh misinai, maybe they're actually explicit in the Torah and not halacha l'mosh misinai. So asks the Gemara, 6 lines from the bottom, Daf Hey Amud Beis, says the Gemara, shiurin deoraisa ninhu. How can you say that shiurim are halacha l'mosh misinai? They're all deoraisa. How do I know? Because I have a pasuk in Chumash that tells me about a whole bunch of shiurim. What's the pasuk? Tichsiv eretz chito seora v'gefen useina v'rimon eretz zeis shemen udvash. That's the pasuk. And how do we understand this pasuk? V'amar Rav Chanan kol pasuk hazeh l'shiurin ne'emar. This whole pasuk is speaking about shiurin. You wanted to say yesterday that really shiurin, that the shiur of the mechitza was halacha l'mosh misinai. What do you mean? Shiurim are not halacha l'mosh misinai. This whole pasuk is about shiurim. How is this whole pasuk about shiurim? Says the Gemara as follows. So 3 lines from the bottom. Chita, the first food that's described in the pasuk is chita, which is wheat. Where do we see a shiur based on wheat? So 3 lines from the bottom on Hey Amud Beis, the Gemara says chita lebeis hamenuga, for a house that has tzaras, it has a nega on it. That's not in the Mishnah writes. Hanichnas lebeis hamenuga. A person walks into a house that has a nega. The kelev al kasefa, and his clothing is draped over his shoulder. Imagine the way that we wear our talesim over our shoulders before we unfold them. The sandalav v'tabe osav biado. His shoes, his rings, he's not wearing them properly. Rather, he's carrying them in his hand. Then instantly, right when this person walks into this house that has a nega, hu v'hein tmein miyad. Instantly, the person and the begadim become tamei. Top of Vav Amud Aleph. However, says the Gemara, this is a Mishnah. Hayalavush kelav v'sandalav. Hayalavush kelav. He was wearing his clothing properly, not on his shoulder, but wearing the shirt like a shirt should be worn. The sandalav beraglav, shoes on his feet. The tabe osav be'etz ve'osav. His rings were on his fingers. All of the garments and jewelry were being worn properly. So now we bifurcate. Hu tamei miyad. He does become tamei instantly. However, the clothes that he's wearing, because he's wearing them, have a different din. Vehain tahorin ad, they're going to be tahor until the point when they become tamei. When do they become tamei? Until he is there long enough, the amount of time it would take to eat half of a loaf of bread. What kind of bread? Says the Gemara, paschitin v'lo pas seorin, mesa v'ochel b'liftan. The only type of bread that we're talking about in this measure is the type of bread that's made out of wheat flour, as opposed to that which is made out of barley flour. Rashi highlights that there's a shorter span of time for wheat flour than barley flour, and therefore when the pasuk says chita, the Mishnah indicates that pasuk meant this. It meant that there's a shiur of kedei achilas pras in order for a person's clothes to become tamei, and therefore we see that the word chita is an indicator of a shiur. Yes, the pasuk doesn't say the shiur. Yeah.
Why not when it becomes tamei?
It's not about.
It's a minute later. I mean, what's the nafkamina?
Well, this is all within the realms of Tumah V'Tara, but the question of why is there a distinction of if he's wearing the clothes or not, that's the Succah in Maseches Olos. But here, we're just pointing out that chita is the shiur that's being used. I don't know the answer to your question offhand. I have no idea. But we're using.
If your clothes is tamei, because
No, he's asking what's the difference if you're wearing them or if it's on your shoulder. That's the lumdus within Maseches. That's Tumah V'Tara shilos, right? So we know that Tumah V'Tara is not as rational as we would assume. Tumah V'Tara is very halachic in its nature. There are things like, for example, by para aduma, that a tahor will become tamei if he sprinkles it, and a tamei will become tahor if it's sprinkled upon him. Beyond our pay grade. Either way, this is the distinction, and we see that the word chita is a shiur. Remember our whole question. How can you say that chita, that shiur mar halacha l'mosh misinai? There's a pasuk in Chumash. It's not halacha l'mosh misinai. It's a pasuk in Chumash. Take a look. Chita by beis hamenuga, that your clothes become tamei after that period of time of kedei achilas pras for pas chitin and not pas seorin. 4 lines down, Vav Amud Aleph. Let's continue analyzing this pasuk. We said chita followed by seora. Seora is barley. That's not. The Mishnah writes, etzem kiseora. if a person is holding a bone that has a minimum shiur of a se'ora, a pearl of barley, mitame b'magu v'masa ve'ina mitame b'ohel. In this exacting shiur, it is mitame b'maga to the touch, v'masa to carry. However, ve'ina mitame b'ohel, whereas a mace, which has a larger part of the body would be present, there would be tumas ohel, which would fill a whole room or a whole building, or if you're under a tree, this comes up all the time as we've discussed before. If you have a tree that's half hanging over the cemetery and half hanging over the street, and there's a coin in your car, find another place to drive, because the tuma will go up into the tree and then make everything under the tree tameh. So there's no tumas ohel in this shiur of etzem kiseora. If it's only the size of a piece of a pearl of barley, there is no tumas ohel. Next in the pasuk, gefen. Gefen is from the grapevine, kidei revi'is yain lenazir, separate of the liquid that he's not allowed to drink, as Rashi points out. We're talking here about the other parts of the grapes, the fleshy part and the skins and whatever else. If that, through water replacement, Rashi actually highlights how we measure this. How do we measure this shiur? So what you do is you take all of the solid parts of the grapes and you drop it into a cup of wine. And then with water displacement, the amount of water that displaces with a kezayis of the pieces of the grapes, that then generates the shiur of Isser. And that's different than it would be with water, because water is less viscous than wine. Wine will keep its place a little bit better. Water will spill out more quickly. So that would be a slight difference here as well. And that's what in regards to gefen. Next, te'ena, the pasuk says about a te'ena, which is a date, which is a fig, kigrogris lotzas Shabbos. If we're going back a couple of Maseches, we learned in Maseches Shabbos in the Mishnayos there, that the shiur for carrying on Shabbos is a grogris the size of a fig. Next, rimon, Ditznan, the Mishnah writes, Kol kli ba'ale batim shiurin kirimonim. When it comes to a kli that's owned by a person and it had a status of tuma, so the halacha is that if you break a hole in it that's large enough that a rimon, a pomegranate, can fit in, then it loses its tuma status and can come back to a tahor status. We see here that the rimon is being used. Next part of the pasuk, eretz zeis shemen. What does eretz zeis shemen mean? The word udvash should not be here, as the Meforshim point out. Eretz shekol shiureha kizesim. Eretz zeis shemen. Everything, all the shiurim are kizesim. Says the Gemara, have you been paying attention to the last 10 lines of Gemara? All of the shiur markazesim. We started out by saying that we had a shiur of bread of kedei achilas pras. And then we went on to se'ora of etzem kiseora, which is also not a kazayis. And then we said gefen, which was a reviz, which is also not a kazayis. Then we said te'ena, which is a grogris, which is also not a kazayis. And then we said rimon, which is also not a kazayis. And you just make a drasha, eretz shekol shiureh kazesim, asks the Gemara, a third of the way down, kol shiureh sal kadaitach, where have you been? Ha'ika hani de amrinan. Everything else we just said prior to this is not a kazayis. So what are you talking about? So says the Gemara, you're right. In general, when we talk shiurim, what's the shiur to bench? Then we're typically, that is the most common shiur that is referenced in halacha, which is kezesim. Final drasha of this pasuk, we've done chita, se'ora, gefen, rimon, te'ena, all of them. We've gone through all of them. Here's the last one, dvash. Now we should know, and if we don't, this should be clear to us. When the Torah is talking about dvash, we're not talking about bee honey. We're talking about date honey. It's a big distinction. It's a nice, interesting shaila in the postgame. Why is honey okay if it's developed by bees? It's not ingested by them. It's only kept in like sacks on their legs and in parts of their body. They don't actually eat it, because then we would have a halacha called kol hayotze mina tamei tamei. If you have milk from a camel, well, it was expressed by a camel, and the animal's tummy, so the milk is tummy. But honey from a bee is not problematic at all. Afalpi that eating a bee is probably an isser d'oraisa many, many times over. But because it's kept external to the body and not ingested, so therefore it's fine. This dvash, anyways, is not that. This dvash is date honey. And what do we learn from the date? Says the Gemara, we just learned Maseches Yoma. We just had this. Kakosebes agasa b'yom kippurim. What do we see from all of this? Alma, says the Gemara, de'oraisanin. We see that shiurim, they're not halacha l'Moshe Sinai. It's not passed down Rebbe to Talmud from Moshe and Mount Sinai. No, that's incorrect. Look at all of these psukim. Look at this. All the drashas, one shiur after the next. Don't tell me it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. It's a pasuk in Chumash. It's a regular din d'oraisa. It's not halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Says the Gemara, what are you talking about? Did you see the word kizayis mentioned in the Torah? Did you see the word rimon being used as a shiur mentioned in the Torah? V'tizbara, is what you're saying logical? That this pasuk indicates that it's not halach l'moshe misina, it's a regular din d'oraisa? Absolutely not. Shiurin mikside? Go look in Chumash. Do you see that it says b'chdei achilas pras? Do you see that it says te'ena and it's a groger? Nothing. The pasuk says nothing. Your question is my answer. Says the Gemara as follows: Ella hilchasaninhu. The word hilchasa here means halach l'moshe misinai. That whole pasuk is just an asmachta. The hilchasa, the halach l'moshe misinai, is each and every shiur. Each and every shiur is halacha l'Moshe Misinai. And the pasuk v'kra asmachta be'almahu. So we asked and answered. Remember, we started today by saying that we're going to question the line that shiurim chatzitzin and mechitzin are halacha l'Moshe Misinai. We tried to say shiurim were a regular din d'oraisa, and we concluded incorrect. So we've asked and answered our first question. Next sugya, 10, 12 lines from the bottom, vav amud aleph. What about chatzitza? Chatzitzin d'oraisa ninu. Chatzitzin are not halacha l'Moshe Misinai. That's what you tried to say yesterday in Daf Yomi. That does not work because chatzitza is a regular din d'oraisa. It's not a halacha l'Moshe Misinai. How do we know? That a person has to wash themselves in water. Shelo yehei davar chotzeitz beino levein hamayim. It has to be that there's nothing separating the flesh from the body. So many shilas, as I referenced yesterday, casts and Invisalign, all the shilas that come up of anything, earrings that are put in very tightly, nail polish that women forget to put on. I just got a shila from someone that I did not know the answer to. I called Ray Robinson, a student of mine that I taught. She said, I just got a $50 manicure with this, no chip, gel stuff supposed to last for a month. I'm like, why? Why would you do that? You were already in Sheva Nekiyim. You knew you had to go to the mikvah. No, but I had to go to an event. I'm like, so do the $5 manicure. What are you doing? Rabbi Robinson would not let me give her a kula. She's playing the game. Absolutely not. And she got no kula, and she had to take off her expensive manicure. Not allowed. We're going to discuss this more in detail now. But says the Gemara that this chatzitza, that you want to say chatzitza is halacha l'Moshe Misinai, it's not. It's a pasuk in Chumash for chatzitz b'saro b'mayim. So says the Gemara, no. Ki asai hilchasa l'sa'aro. When the halacha l'Moshe Misinai comes along, you're right. It's not talking about flesh. It's not talking about skin. It's talking about the hair. It's talking about l'sa'aro. Ucha de Rabba bar bar Chana, 5 lines from the bottom. Tamar Rabba bar bar Chana, nima achas kshura chotzetzes. We don't have a lot of hair, but let's say that someone had very long hair. A woman's regular hair is a great example of this. I'm sure all of your wives shave their head, but in the event that they don't, the one long hair that they have, they tie it in a knot. If it's one hair, kshura, and it's tied up, chotzetzes, then the halacha is that's a chatzitza. She's not tahora if she goes to the mikvah zanida, if the hair is brushed, if the hair isn't brushed properly. If there's one knot in one hair, then that is considered a chatzitza. Shalosh, if you take 3 hairs together and you tie a knot with them, then the halacha is einon chotzitzos. Then the halacha is that there is no chatzitza there because you can't tie that very tight. Just the nature of the hair, it won't keep a very tight knot. Shtayim eini yodea. This is the halacha l'Moshe Misinai, is that we know that 1 is problematic, 3 is not, and 2 we don't know. So says the Gemara, still, saro, hair too. You want to say sar is the halacha l'Moshe Misinai? It is absolutely not. 4 lines from the bottom, vav amud aleph. Saro nami d'oraisa ninu d'chsiv rachatzes b'saro b'mayim. The word es hatafel lebesaro. No, the pasuk in Chumash has the word es. We're making a drush on the word es. What do we learn from there? It's that which is secondary to the flesh of the body. Umay nihu sa'arod. What is that? That's the hair on the body. So again, we're back to our question. You want to tell me chatzitza halacha l'Moshe Misinai? No, it's not, because I have psukim in Chumash both for basar and for seyar, for hair, to tell me that chatzitza is not allowed. So it's not a halacha l'Moshe Misinai. What is it? Is it din d'oraisa? Says the Gemara, good point. Ki asai hilchasa. Where does the halacha l'Moshe Misinai come along? It comes along in the following place. Lichad de Rabbi Yitzchak, according to the opinion of Rabbi Yitzchak. And as we turn to the top of Vav Amud Beis, says the Gemara, Damar Rabbi Yitzchak, Davar Torah. Take a look at Rashi, top of Vav Amud Beis. First Rashi, Dibur Maskal Davar Torah, halacha l'Moshe Misinai. We've already seen 2 languages in our Gemara for halacha l'Moshe Misinai. We've seen hilchasa and we've seen davar Torah. So we should just put that in the vocab list in our head. When we see davar Torah, it means halacha l'Moshe Misinai. So davar Torah, this is what Rabbi Yitzchak is teaching us. And what is the davar Torah? Rubo umakbid alav chotzes. If the majority of you is covered, and you wish you weren't covered in that, then the halacha is chotzes. Big machlokes Rashi and Tosfos. Take a look at the second Rashi, top line, Dibur Maskal Rubo. Rov sa'aro. Most of your hair, metunaf petit, it's covered in clay or paint. O kashur achas, or they're all tied up in knots, umakbid alav, and you wish it wasn't that way, chotzetz. So Rashi defines our Gemara as speaking about hair. However, take a look at Tosfos, top Tosfos, Dibur Maskal Davar Torah. He says, Yesh meforshim, some say that when Rav Yitzchak teaches his din that ruba umakbid alav chotzetz, Yesh meforshim dahacha ayri b'seyar. Aval bebasar chotzetz afilu miuto. And on flesh, maybe we'd be under the assumption that on the body, there is no question of rove and mute, nothing. Anything that's on your body is problematic. Anything. no kulas. She'eno makbid v'kasha the Rabbeinu Tam, and then Tosfos goes on to discuss this. But I'm just highlighting that there is a chasm in the Rishonim about this as to what this line means in the Gemara. Ruba umakbid alav chotzetz. We paskin like the Balei Tosfos in that if a person does have something on their body, let's say they forgot to get. Or they couldn't, they had a very hard time getting nail polish off of one nail for whatever reason. So then some Rabbanim might be makil to say, okay, it's miut and it's eino makbid. These are the features that we talk about in this area of psak. It's a miut, it's a minority of your body, and eino makbid, you'd be happy for it to be gone, right? It's not a big deal. So there are times that there are kulas. So we paskin like Tosfos, not like Rashi, because according to Rashi, the leniencies of ruba umakbid, 51% of your body is covered. That only applies by your hair, not by your flesh. By your flesh, 1% is problematic. Big machlokas in the Rishonim. Okay, so here's what the Gemara says. Our halacha lamosh misinai by hair is that when it's ruba umakbid, we're going to go with Rashi's pshat for the Gemara because it happens to fit a little nicer. It says the Gemara, ruba umakbid alav, that if most of your hair, I'm thinking dreadlocks, okay? You have 51% of your hair is inaccessible because you have a dreadlock. So then ruba umakbid alav, the halacha is chotzetz, that is considered a chatzitza and the mikvah does not count. Vishe'eno makbid alav, what if it's rov? But you don't care one way or the other. You're not makbid about it. So then midoraisa eino chotzetz. That midoraisa is not considered a chatzitza. However, the gazru, the rabbis made an injunction. Vavam Midbei, second line. The gazru al rubo she'eino makbid. They made a gzeira about where one's hair is 51% covered in dreadlocks or paint or whatever. She'eno makbid, even though you're not makbid. We made a gzeira about that, mishum rubo ha-makbid, in a case, because we're concerned that you might mix that up with a case of 51%, and you do care about it. We also made a gzeira about al miuto ha-makbid, where one is 49% of their hair covered, and they care, mishum rubo ha-makbid, for the same reason. So that's all the din derabanan. Asks the Gemara a question, 4 lines down. V'ligzor, maybe we should add another gzera. V'ligzor nami al miuto she'eno makbid. Right? We started out by saying rov and makbid is chotzetz. What if it's not rov? What if it's miut? And what if it's not makbid? It's eno makbid. All of the leniencies employed. Maybe we should have an isser derabanan there as well. Says the Gemara, and the concern should be mishum miuto hamakbid, because of the isser derabanan level of having 49% of the dreadlock of your hair in dreadlocks, and you care about it. Inami, or we should say mishum rubo she'eno makbid, or we should be concerned about a case of 51% where you really just don't care one way or the other. But says the Gemara, you can't do that. That's called a gzera l'gzera. Says the Gemara, he gufa gzera. We already have the injunction. We already have a rabbinic injunction. You're putting a rabbinic injunction against a rabbinic. It's double layered. We don't do that with dinei derabanan. Says the Gemara, he gufa gzera. The anan nekum v'nigzor gzera l'gzera. This should be a familiar phrase, and we will see this in Shas, I'm guessing hundreds of times, probably definitely 100. So says the Gemara, this is a rhetorical question that ends a conversation. We don't do this. You're going to go make a gzera, an isser derabanan, because of an isser derabanan? No, we don't do that. Not allowed. Okay, so that answered our second question. We said, what about chatzitza? We started out yesterday by saying that chatzitza is lachal mosh misinai. Then we said, wait a minute, it's all psukim. Answers the Gemara, like Rabbi Yitzchak, no, we're talking about the hair, or according to Rashi, or according to the body in general, rubo and makbid, the dinim of Rabbi Yitzchak, that is all halachal mosh misinai. What about the third case? Remember, this is what we're all here for, which is Maseches Succah. And we said that Rabbi Yehuda was of the opinion that the reason that we know that a sukkah has a minimum shiur of 10 tfachim is because of halacha l'mosh misinai. Asks the Gemara, hold on 1 second. We are approximately 7 lines down. Mechitzin, ha de'amran, that's our case. Hanicha the Rabbi Yehuda. I understand why Rabbi Yehuda needed to say that a mechitzah is 10 tfachim because of halacha l'mosh misinai. Remember what he said. Rabbi Yehuda yesterday said that when it comes to the kalim of the Beis HaMikdash, when it comes to the kalim, every amma is 5 tfachim. If every amma is 5 tfachim, then the aron, which was 1.5 amos, when we convert it into tfachim, it's only 7.5 amos, plus the kaporos is 8.5. And the Mishkan, the bottom third of the Mishkan, which was 20 tfachim, so there we had the kruvim on top. And yesterday we said that the space above the kapores, up to 20, is how tall a sukkah should be. That should be 11 and a half. And we don't paskin that way. Everybody knows we don't paskin that a minimum sukkah is 11 and a half. So says the Gemara, I understand why Rabbi Yehuda needed that. But says the Gemara, Reb Meir, according to Reb Meir, who was of the opinion that every amma was 6 tvachim, and therefore the aron was 9 tfachim plus 1 for the kaporos is 10. His math worked perfectly for the Mishkan. According to him, Michael Amemar, what was the halacha l'mosh misinai for him? He didn't need all of the gymnastics. It all worked out for him. We understand Rabbi Yehuda. He didn't have the math, but the math worked for Reb Meir. So what is his halacha l'mosh misinai? Answers the Gemara. 8-9 lines down. Ki asay hilchasa. When Rav Meir says that there's a halacha l'Moshe Misinai about mechitzin, it wasn't about the sukkah being 10 tfachim. What was mechitzin according to Rabbi Yehuda? What was halacha l'Moshe Misinai? Ki asay hilchasa legud v'lavud v'dofen akuma. Beautiful. Kafto referach. We've explained all of the shitas. Today, so far, the first amud that we have learned was answering one question. Yesterday, we learned that there's a halacha l'Moshe Misinai about shiur and chatzitzin and mechitzin. We questioned them in all three cases and answered them in all three cases. Yes, there are some things that are regular deoraisas and some things that are special deoraisas like halachos l'Moshe Misinai. And in each case, we answered them by shiur, and the pasuk itself has no shiur, and that part was halacha l'Moshe Misinai. By the chatzitzas, we said that with the hair, Rashi, and with the whole body, Tosos, Ruba Makbid, that was halacha l'Moshe Misinai. And by the mechitzas, according to Rabbi Yehuda, that was our case of the 10 tefachim. And according to Rav Meir would say that the word mechitzin in halacha l'Moshe Misinai land is meant to reference specifically good, lavud, and dofen akuma, all of which are halachos l'Moshe Misinai. Great. That brings us to the 2 dots, 10 lines down. We said in our Mishnah, V'shein la shalosh tefanos, that if a sukkah does not have 3 walls, it's not kosher. We know that we paskin this way, that we need to have 2 walls and a tefach. Where does this come from? So that comes from today's Gemara. Great Yedias Klalios in regards to sukkah, a great Dvar Torah for the sukkah. Says the Gemara as follows, Tana Rabbanan, the rabbis taught us, Shtaim kilchas anu shlishis afilu tefach. This is the Tanakama, the Rabbanan. The Rabbanan hold that you need 2 regular walls, kihilchasan, v'shlishis afilu tefach. Now, we never really learned explicitly what Kehil Chasan means. The Rishonim have explained it earlier on previous blot, but what's the minimum size of a sukkah? We said in the name of Beis Shammai, who we rarely paskin like, that it's Rosh of Aruba v'Shulchano, and we paskin that that's 7 tfachim in each direction, 7 by 7. So 2 of the walls have to be 7, have to be 10 tall, and they have to be 7 tfachim wide. The shlishi safilu tefach in the 3rd wall only needs to be 1 tefach. So we have this L shape, right, with a little kick, right? 7 tefachim, and a little kick. And that's a kosher sukkah. In Chicago, it's a very bad idea to build your sukkah that way because there's wind and there's raccoons and a whole bunch of other problems. So you're probably going to want to build a better sukkah than that. But halacha l'maisa, that is considered a kosher sukkah at its minimum. Reb Shimon, however, is of a different opinion. Reb Shimon Omer, no. Shalosh kil chasan, you need 3 proper walls of 7 tefachim each. The revi is afilu tefach. So he says you have, I'll just draw from an aerial view for those of you. We have 1, 2, 3 full walls, and the last wall is just a little bit of a tefach, and that's considered kosher. Let's dig into this machlokes tanaim. Says the Gemara, b'mai kimiflage, 1/3 of the way down on Vav Amud Beis. What are these tanaim arguing about? Rabbanon savre yesh eim l'masores, v'Reb Shimon savar yesh eim l'mikra. Famous shas machlokes in general. Yesh eim l'masores means we care how the words sound. Yesh aim lemikra, we care how the words are pronounced. Other way around. Yesh aim lemesores. What? We care how. Hold on 1 second. Yesh aim lemesores is what it looks like. It's what the word actually looks like. I actually wrote this down. What it looks like. But I read it wrong. Okay. Yesh aim lemesores is what does the word look like, and yesh aim lemikra is what it sounds like. So here's the Gemara gives an example. Rabbanon savre yesh aim lemesores. We care what the word looks like. So the word is read basukos, but it looks like bisukas. So we have 3 references: bisukas, bisukas, bisukos. If you're about Koreh, you should read the word bisukos. But it looks like singular, singular, and plural. 1, 1 plus 2, 1 plus 1 plus 2 is 4. Harekan arba, 4 references to a sukkah. Dal chad legufe, of the 4, we need to remove 1 for the fundamental din that 1 actually needs to build a sukkah. We can't overlook the obvious. We got to get the pshat and the pasuk first. So 1 of the references of the 4, singular, singular, plural, bisukas, bisukas, and bisukos, 1 of the 4 is dedicated to the fact that a sukkah needs to be built. So dal chad legufe, pashu lehutzlasa, there are 3 left. And the Tanakama is of the opinion, shtaim kil chasan, that 2 of the walls have to be regular. And here is where the halacha l'Moshe Misinai kicks in. The asay hilchasa comes along, the halacha l'Moshe Misinai vigarasa l'shlishis v'ukmasa tefach, and it makes the 3rd wall smaller in order to establish that that 3rd wall only needs to be a tefach. And that's how we conclude, according to the Tanakama, 2 full walls of 7 tefach wide each, plus a 3rd wall that is only 1 tefach. The Reb Shimon savar yesh aim lemikra. It depends how it sounds. Basukos, basukos, basukos. And here it's plural, plural, plural. 2 plus 2 plus 2, harekan sheish. Dal chad, we take one whole word, kra legufe, we take one whole word, and now because we took away one whole word, pashulahu arba. Now we're left of the initial 6 references, because basukos is 2 times 3, which is 6. We took away one whole word, which was 2 units, and now we're left pashulahu arba. What's left? Shalosh kehilchasan, 3 full-size walls. And says Reb Shimon, asai hilchasa comes along the halacha l'moshe misina v'garasa l'revi'is v'ukmasa tefach, and it shortens that 4th wall to be simply 1 tefach. So this is how the Tanakama and Reb Shimon understand each of their respective shitas. It's a question of how we look at the psukim in Chumash. Do we say yesh aim l'masores, or do we say yesh aim l'mikra? It says the Gemara 2/3 of the way down. Second approach, or I could tell you that there's another way to analyze this machlokes. Dekule alma yesh aim lemikra. Everyone is of the opinion that yesh aim lemikra, and we look at the words as to how they are. Which one is it? We look at the words and how they actually sound, and that should bring us to 6. V'hacha b'haka miflage. Mar savar sechacha boyakra. One set of the 6, by the way, we took away one whole word for the sukkah itself, so now we're left with 4. And mar savar sechacha boyakra. And according to one, we actually need a pasuk for schach. Umar savar sechacha lo boyakra. So the Tanakama was of the opinion sechacha boyakra, and it took our number of 4 down to 3. 3 walls left. Same explanation as before. One of which was shortened by the halacha l'moshe misinai. Umar savar Rav Shimon was of the opinion sechacha lo boyakra, and therefore we still have 4 references left to sukkah, and therefore 3 full walls and 1 short wall. And the third answer the Gemara presents, there will be one more answer after this, and we're going to curl up to the top of the next page, about 5 lines down. The third answer the Gemara gives, no. Really, it's just a question of what the word looks like. So that's basukas, basukas, basukos. That's singular, singular, plural, 4 references. Here is the machlokas. Mar savar ki asoi hilchasa legareya. According to the Tanakama, the halacha l'moshe misinai is coming to shorten the last wall, the gareya, to make less. It's going to shorten the last wall. Umar savar ki asai hilchasa lehosif. According to Reb Shimon, he's saying, no, you have to add a wall. You have to add a whole wall. That's what it means to add to the wall. And that's why it's 3 full walls plus a little bit. Fourth answer, no. Really, everyone agrees that when a halacha l'moshe misinai comes up in this context, it means to shorten a wall. And we agree that yesh aim l'masores, that we are focused on what the words actually look like. Besukas, besukas, besukos. So that's 4. Says the Gemara, v'hacha bedorshin tchilos kemiflage. Here our question is can we double darshan that first word of basukos? 1, to reference the mitzvah of building a sukkah itself, and the second, for these purposes, to say, to be counted in this way as well, to indicate how many walls there should be. So that's a machlokes, 6 lines from the bottom. Mar savar dorshin tchilos. According to the Tanakama, we are, according to Rav Shimon, we're dorshin tchilos. We can double use the word, and therefore there's 4 references left for sukkahs. Umar savar, ein dorshin tchilos, that's the Tanakama of our Mishnah, and that's why they hold that there's 3, because we cannot double use the word, and that explains their shitas in 4 different ways. And the Gemara just adds one more piece about Reb Shimon, who says that there are 4 walls. Rav Masna Amar, Tamid Reb Shimon mehacha. Really, we know that Reb Shimon has 4 walls. The lumdus is from above, but we have another reference here as well from a pasuk that we learned on Daf Beis. The sukkah is going to provide shade for us on hot days, and it's going to create a safe place for us on days when there's a storm. And the Meforshim don't explain, the Gemara doesn't explain this here, but the Meforshim explain that you can't have a protective area that only has 2 walls and a tefach. There need to be at least 3 walls, and therefore Reb Shimon must hold that there are 4 walls. Not a simple pshat in the pasuk, because that 4th wall is only a tefach. You live in Chicago in the middle of a blizzard, you only have 3 walls and a tefach, you're going to be very, very cold and very, very snowy. So difficult Gemara. There are other shitas know how to understand this. The Rishonim spend some time on this, but nevertheless, the conclusion of our Gemara is that we have a machlokas between the Tanakam and the Rabbanan, whether or not we need 2 full walls of 7 tefach each plus a tefach, or do we hold like Reb Shimon, who says we need 3 full walls plus a tefach, and we paskin like the Rabbanan. One last sugya for tonight, says the Gemara, that extra tefach that we're talking about, no matter who you hold like, the also tefach, that extra tefach, heichan ma'amido, where does it go? Can you put it anywhere? So let's say you have your L shape, right? You've got your L shape like this. Where do I put the, can I put it anywhere? Can I put it in the opposite corner? This is like reminds me of like trigonometry, like Succah Toa, like you have opposite and hypotenuse. Where does it go? Where does it go? It's unclear, says the Gemara. There's a machlokas. Amar Rav. Rav says, where do we put the extra tefach? Ma'amido keneged hayotze. It has to align with one of the ends. So that means if you're starting here, we have wall number 1, 7 tvachim, wall number 2, 7 tvachim, tefach. Or the reverse. Down, down. It's always going to be connected to one of the ends. And Amrei La, Rav Kahana Rav Asi, the Rav, Vayamidenu keneged Rosh HaTor. Why don't we put it keneged Rosh HaTor? As you can see from the pictures on the side here, the Maharshal has a couple of different shitas. He was of the opinion that this was angled in. So you have, one wall, 2 wall, and then tapered inward as if you're about to build a triangle of some kind. That was his shita. There are other shitas as well that it's in fact catty corner. It's actually opposite the L shape. So if you have your right angle, right here in the lower corner, it's actually on the opposite. So these are different shitas in the Gemara. And then Shasik Rav did not respond. And that, we don't even know what that means. What does it mean, Shasik Rav? Did Rav not respond because he agreed or because he disagreed? A little hard to tell. There's a bit of a discussion in the Rishonim about this as well. Last but not least, Itmar Nami Amar Shmuel. There was another statement in the times of the Amoraim by Shmuel Mishmei de Levi, Ma'amido Keneged Hayotze, like the first shita that we saw, that this extra tefach has to be connected to one of the walls that are already existing. V'chein Mor in Bei Medrasha. This is how they paskin in the base Medrash. Ma'amido Keneged Hayotze. Reb Simon v'item Reb Yeshua ben Levi Amar Oselo tefach shachuk. This tefach that we make is not a regular tefach. It's a tefach shochak. Not shachuk. Tefach shochak. What is that? Let's look at Rashi, line 5, Dibur Hamaskal. Tefach shochak. Modedin b'dalet etzpaos. We take our 4 fingers. She'enam nogos zu bezu. We have to make sure that when we measure this one, the 4 fingers are not touching one another. It's a little bit of an extended, it's like 25% larger, maybe more, 30% larger, depending on your fingers, I guess. It's a little bit larger because none of your fingers are touching. That's what Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi says. Osef, 5th line of the Gemara. Ose lo tefach shochak uma'amido bepachos mishlosha tfachim samach ledofen. You're allowed to do something still different than both of the other shitas. It's tefach shochak, a little bit of a larger tefach, and you can put it near either end of the wall, but it has to be within 3 tvachim. And anything that's within 3, it's as if it's connected, and therefore that would be appropriate as well. Is he saying this is lechatchila? Is he saying this is the best way? Are there better ways? He seems to say it's the same exact thing, because lavod, as we just learned, is halacha l'moshe misinai, and that's going to be the conclusion of our Gemara with these 3 different shitas. Shita number 1 is, where does a tefach go? It goes at the end and it's angled in. Shita number 2, it goes at the end and it's straight. Shita number 3 is that it can go opposite, no problem at all. And shita number 4 is shochak, that it has to be a little bit of a larger one, and it can be anywhere extended away from the walls, provided that it's within 3 tvachim. We will stop right here and pick up tomorrow night with Daf Zayin. I'm going to jump ahead a little bit tomorrow to compensate for Tisha B'Av, because we're not going to be learning on Tisha B'Av. So in all likelihood, we'll be a little bit ahead once we get to Shabbos, so that we don't have to feel pressurized to learn it on. We're not allowed to learn on. I asked Rabbi Robinson for a kula. He said no, so it's not happening. But so we'll figure everything out by the time Shabbos rolls around. Wishing you all a beautiful